Guys, did you know that nobody knows what the word intersectionality means? Did you know that? That's actually true. Nobody knows, especially conservatives. They have no fucking idea. It's like critical race theory. They legitimately, genuinely have no clue. They have no idea what that word means, okay? I bring you now to this. Intersectionality, Disney writer versus Ben Shapiro. Are you ready for it? This isn't a traditional PragerU video, okay? But it occurred to me recently, while streaming, that I have explained intersectionality like 27 times, and I don't think I've ever put out a video on it. Help me out. Ben! What the left
say that,
says.
like, I think white women need to kind of step up their game, to be quite honest.
True.
Like, sorry, but I'm calling you out. Like, you really do, because, like, you know, there's like we can.
Not just what, all women, yeah, all women. Honestly, lately, just been blowing it. Look at how many people are turning to catboys. You know, there's a reason. MGTOW, people are turning around. They're walking. They're turning 360 degrees around. They're walking away. You know.
Couldn't agree more with everything that these brilliant women are saying, but like I'm also seeing the silent killer, which is a lot of white women at the top who are kind of reinforcing a lot of old ideas.
Yeah. Oh.
If you're now thinking,
oh,
what the hell are you talking about? You haven't spent much time on a modern college campus.
Hey, Ben.
Intersectionality is a form of identity politics.
All right, let's let's snap back to reality. Whoop, there goes gravity. So, intersectionality is a form of identity politics. Do you guys know what identity politics means now? Nothing. It means literally nothing. The term identity politics has no meaning anymore. It originally had a meaning. The most cogent use of the term identity politics is usually leftists who are criticizing liberal identity politics, which is to say, you know, man spreading, just very, like, a very surface level, very thinly veiled sort of attempt at addressing diversity without really fixing it, you know?
In which the value of your opinion depends on how many victim groups you belong to.
No, that is actually not what intersectionality means at all. That's incredible that they think that, though. That intersectionality is like a religion. And when you're a part of that religion, you actually, like, assign, there are power levels. You know what I mean? Like everyone walks around in these, like, dark gray occultist robes, you know, addressing each other by rank, and somebody bumps into somebody else's shoulder and they're like, who are you? And that person turns around, they fucking fling their robe open, and they have like 27, they're like an autistic, disabled, like quadriplegic on a hover car, black, transgender, like every possible thing. You know, like, they have a fucking regalia like a general in a military dictatorship, you know? Yeah, well, that actually sounds kind of pog, to be honest, but that actually is not what intersectionality is. In fact, as a firm advocate of intersectionality as a concept, you all have probably noticed that I'm very opposed to the idea that people's opinions become more valid just because they're a member of oppressed groups. I think that's very bad logic. Thankfully, most people don't actually believe that, just a very small and very annoying subsection of progressives.
At the bottom of the totem pole is the person everybody loves to hate, the straight white male.
Boo fucking who. Wah.
And who's at the top? Well, it's very hard to say, because new groups claim victim status all the time. No one can keep track. So, how does...
You gonna follow up on that or clarify that statement at all? Like, here's an example of that happening. No one can keep track. It's actually pretty easy to keep track of. So, intersectionality, it's really, really, really simple, okay? The idea is, here, watch. This is super easy, okay? I'm going to talk to the gamers in the audience. Any gamers here? Anyone hyped for Keanu Reeves Cyberpunk 2077 Witcher 4 Geralt of Rivia? I know some of you are. There we go. There we go. Okay. Now, let's say, remember back when you were in high school? Okay? Remember back when you were in high school? Okay? You remember. Maybe some of you are still in high school. I don't fucking know. And there was a guy you knew, okay? And this dude looked like a fucking underwear model, okay? This guy looked like a Calvin Klein advert made real, okay? Just a solid brick of a jawline, flawless skin, the hair swoop. And when you'd see this person, you'd be like, because fuck them for their you know, insane bone genetics, you know. When you see the chat, the entirety of the online gaming community is basically united around the idea that gaming is a form of escapism from the world in which the Chad dominates, you know? This narrative repeats itself over and over and over again at varying degrees of severity, whether you go from the far, far, far right incel communities all the way just to regular game spaces. There's still this general dislike of people who are just naturally very, very conventionally attractive, you know? And this you see this all the fucking time on Twitter, Reddit, whatever. This is a very, very common tendency. And in fact, this tendency is so common that we make jokes about people who look like that, giving dating advice to people who don't look like that. You know the 2 rules of dating? You guys know it, right? Come on. It's be attractive and don't be unattractive. And that's the joke, right? It's, you know, it's a forehead joke. Like, if that guy walks up to you and he looks like an underwear model and he's like, hey, bro, you're having some trouble getting the girls, huh? Dude, just be yourself. Yeah, just, you know, be yourself and people will appreciate you for who you are, as like the sunlight ripples off his flawless facial face, you know, and we make fun of that. And what we're talking about there, unironically, when people complain about that, and you've all seen that happen online, that's a person complaining about a more privileged individual engaging in a microaggression against them. That is what they are doing. They don't know it. They aren't aware of the terminology, or if they do, they make fun of the terminology, but that is exactly what they are doing. They are irritated that somebody with a greater degree of social privilege is ignoring the disparity between themselves and him to give banal advice that underlines how unaware the privileged person is of the situation you're in. That's a microaggression. That's it. You're doing it right there. The thing is, the terms used by people who believe in intersectionality are universally recognized. They're universally believed in. Some people are just more aware of it than others. Ben Shapiro over there would probably agree with some of the tenets of intersectionality if I just didn't use any of the terms on him. Like, here's another one. That really handsome guy, the Chad, who you're annoyed with, also dirt poor. Also dirt poor. Super poor. Like, has to hawk food off other people during cafeteria time, you know? Really, really, really poor. And let's say you're decently well off. Well, now you're in a weird position, right? Who's better off socially? Because Chad over there looks great, but Chad over there also can't go to social events, can't go and hang out with friends like eating out, or he has to bring his own sandwich, an uncooked, you know, rye bread with a slice of American cheese in between. Well, who actually has the greater degree of social privilege there? Who's actually winning? Who's benefiting more? Well, the answer for that is intersectionality. It's the idea that, you know, there are some ways in which people can be advantaged and some ways in which people can be disadvantaged. And that's it. It's really that simple. Intersectionality was the solution to some of the tendencies of like second wave feminism that kind of led to a lot of people being man-hating. We hate man-hating, right? The gamer crowd, we're not a big fan of that. The man-hating? Well, a lot of that kind of came from earlier tenets of progressive thought being centered around the victim status of marginalized groups without any concern for the way all these tendencies overlap. So intersectionality kind of fixes that. Most of the time when conservatives argue against feminism, they're arguing against a straw man established during the second wave of feminism, and they don't recognize the thing that they're attacking it for is something intersectionality was designed to address. But, all right.
How does this intersectionality thing play out? Something like this.
Tell me, Ben.
Let's say you're a gay white woman.
Sure.
As a queer woman,
your opinion matters, but less than that of a gay black woman. Why? Because while all women are oppressed by the patriarchy, and all gays are oppressed by the heterosexual majority, blacks have a victim status that whites obviously don't.
Like,
well,
the guy
true.
at the top's louder. It's harder to say, like, I think this should be a black writer.
Of course, a gay black woman's victim status is less than that of a black trans woman, who ranks below a black Muslim.
I like that. That's good. They gave the black trans woman like big beefy muscles. I like that. They're really hitting it with the bold and impartial understanding of intersectionality as a concept. Remember, all transphobia boils down to disgust and fear. None of it has anything to do with principle. Underneath all transphobia is somebody who is either deeply afraid of non-heterogeneous gender expression, or somebody who is terrified of being attracted to somebody who has a Y chromosome.
Trans woman, and so on. The more memberships you can claim in oppressed groups, the more aggrieved you are and the higher you rank. Get it? Good, because it's about to get even more complicated.
This is like the equivalent. I think you've covered this PragerU video before. Well, I've got a shit memory. We're doing it again. I feel like this is like the progressives equivalent of the Protocols of the Elder Zion, or whatever the fuck that book is called, you know? Like crazy fucking, like, I feel like one of these days, like something's going to be disseminated, some like hastily photocopied book, you know, tethered together, and it'll be like the Protocols of the Elders of Intersectionality, and it'll be just some woefully insane shit about secret handshakes, and you know, about like the rankings and like the exact point value of every kind of oppression, and they're going to go off on it.
It's about to get even more complicated.
Sure.
Intersectionality takes your victim status and uses it as the basis for creating alliances with other victim groups.
What?
I'll just speak from my own personal experience. It's just like I wasn't sure how to be an ally. I wasn't sure what type. I got so caught up in like what kind of terminology I was supposed to be using.
Here's the logic.
What?
A black gay and a Hispanic gay may not belong to the same victim group racially, but they do belong to the same victim group on the basis of their sexuality. By focusing on the places where various victim identities intersect, intersectionality creates a united.
Keep in mind, it's not just victim identities, it's all identities. So the same goes for men and white people and what have you. They're exclusively focusing, you know, this is like legit fear-mongering. They're actually focusing on this as though this is some sort of like cabal or cult designed to get all the minorities together to attack the straight white man, you know? Like, we got to put a stop to these people. They're organizing. It's like union busting, except for race and sexuality. This actually probably is what the FBI were thinking when they were targeting like the Black Panther Party, you know? One of the big things they don't talk about in American history classes is that the Black Panther Party and sort of the affiliated racial justice movements of the time weren't these radically like only black people, always black people movements. They were actually really, really interested in reaching out towards other groups that suffered in similar ways, like white people who were being hurt by capitalism, or Latino gangs who were being subjected to the same kind of police brutality as the black people. And that's why they were so fucking dangerous. That's why they were killed. Because they represented a legitimate threat, not to white men, because there were white men in those movements, but rather to the powerful and to the wealthy, which is what Ben Shapiro is representing here, of course.
United us versus them paradigm. Righteous victims rising up together to fight the oppressor, those dreaded straight white men.
Yeah, this is literally like COINTEL propaganda 60 years later. This is the exact same language that they pushed to get like white men to be afraid of the people who are trying to reach out to them. It's actually insane how little things have changed. Listen, there is nothing at all wealthy people love more, nothing at all, than pointing out groups of people trying to elevate the population and getting the scared white suburban dipshits to be afraid of them, rather than the bourgeois or the CIA or any of the operatives who act in their interests, you know? There is nothing they love more than outsourcing your jobs to India and watching as the white middle-class workers get mad at immigrants rather than the bourgeoisie. There is nothing they love more than that. They are cackling, and they've been doing this for 150 years. This strategy has been left unaltered for more than half the length of this country's existence.
This explains why at a rally protesting the treatment of Palestinians by Israel, you might see a contingent of lesbian activists. That's intersectionality at work. They're so united by their victim status that it doesn't matter if Islamists throw gays off of buildings or murder female family members who defy their father's wishes. Victim solidarity trumps all other considerations.
Well, actually, there are overlapping priorities here. See, even if the Palestinian people have, on average, some pretty regressive values when it comes to sexuality, which, well, I don't know that for sure, I imagine is probably the case. First off, that doesn't mean it's okay for them to be genocided. And second off, it's pretty funny for Ben Shapiro to try and play the more civilized than thou card on Palestinians when he's implicitly justifying their genocide in an argument against intersectionality. Like, he had to throw that one in there, you know? You could do that argument for anything, by the way. You know, it's 1832. Oh, well, you claim to be an abolitionist. Well, I can't help but notice that you have had more than a few soirees with Mr. Johnson over there. Let me tell you, the slaves that you claim to represent the values of, well, I don't know how well they would take to your homosexual tendencies. You could make this argument about anything. That's their goal. Break everyone apart. No solidarity. Don't get together. Don't recognize your shared relationship to the systems of power. Everyone has to stay angry at every other group at all times, because that's the easiest way for them to keep us under the boot.
That some professor tucked away in an ivory tower would come up with this nonsense is not surprising. What is surprising...
That is not how intersectionality was. That's... What? Is that how social theories are developed? There's like some random academic somewhere in a fucking castle is like, here you go. What?
Professor tucked away in an ivory tower would come up with this nonsense is not surprising. What is surprising and disturbing is that so many people actually go along with it.
As I started to rise in television, I started to just get more blunt and just start saying, like, I would like a black writer. Because if I said diverse,
No, don't
you know,
say that.
you get, well, white is diverse, which is something somebody said to me. And I was like, wow. I was like, it's not cool, but to really, you know, I reached out to my, you know, the women that I respect who are not white writers and directors, and I said, what should I say? What language should I use?
The reason why they pulled from this what is this interview, this press appearance, this specific video clip, is because it's meant to highlight the fear that people who like Ben Shapiro hold, that you are going to be cucked by intersectionality if you buy into its ideological tenets, that you'll be turned into some limp-wristed, you know, pale, capitulatory, pathetic beta, who will be like, okay, well, I've spoken for 32 seconds at this meeting, and I really think it's time for some people, some voices of color to speak up. And there are people like that, but they aren't, A, representative of the broad majority of people who consider themselves intersectional, and B, these are fucking liberals. These are not the things we advocate for. But conservatives have a categorical inability to understand the difference between liberals and leftists, so to them it might as well be all in the same, you know?
You know, and I think it's worth it if you're in a position of hiring power or green lighting power to like reach out to people that are not like you and say, what can I do to be an ally, and how can I support writers of color and LGBTQ and disabled writers? Like, what can I do?
Intersectionality promotes the biggest hoax of all, that we aren't individuals who are to be judged on the basis of how we act, but are merely members of groups to be judged on the basis of our group identity.
Remember, there is nothing in the universe more cucked than believing exclusively in individuality as a form of social determination. By the way, Ben doesn't believe this. When any anti-Semitism is to be sniffed out of the left, Ben will be the first one to leap up high into the air, fucking pat his kippah down and screech about the anti-Semitism of the left. When it comes to anti-wealth, like tax reappropriation, wealth redistribution, Ben Shapiro is the first fucking person to stand up there and talk about how everyone is ganging up on the rich. When it comes to defending straight white men, the group that is apparently being lionized in intersectional screeds, except I noticed they haven't really been attacked in the clip that's being integrated into this video at all, Ben Shapiro is the first person to jump up and scream about how society isn't treating them properly. Ben Shapiro loves treating them people by groups. He adores it. There's nothing he loves more. But he only likes doing it when doing so enhances the power of the groups that he wants to defend. And that tells you something, doesn't it? Because when Ben Shapiro is suddenly willing to make fallacious accusations of anti-Semitism, to defend the nebulous straight white man, to defend wealthy people, he's doing so in a way that bolsters their social capital. So doesn't that tell you being willing to recognize attacks against groups rather than just attacks against individuals who all happen to belong to a particular group makes them stronger? That group solidarity is something that the wealthy have long been aware of the power of. It's the reason why the Clintons and the Trumps got along so well before 2015, and in all likelihood would continue to be best friends were it not for the fact that they had to run against each other. The wealthy have always known class solidarity. Straight people have always known solidarity. White people have always known solidarity. And they have silently used these collective privileges to shape the way society is built. But when other groups of people try to do it, when other groups who don't have that social power try to strengthen themselves, that is when they get upset. That is when the spittle flies from Ben Shapiro's mouth. That's what he's afraid of.
In other words, you and I, as individuals with our unique experiences, thoughts, and ambitions, count for nothing. Our racial and sexual identity count for everything.
That's not how that works. Ben Shapiro is acting like this is some sort of dystopian future where individuality is nothing in the face of your collective identity. No. Intersectionality refers to broad tendencies that affect groups of people. If you're making like friends or something, nobody does this shit over here on the right. People focus on individual experiences, thoughts, and ambitions. Just because you look at a group of people as a group doesn't mean you're incapable of also looking at them as individuals. Like what Ben Shapiro did for the straight white man. I bet you that if Ben Shapiro met individual straight white men, he could regard them as individuals. But nonetheless, he is very, very, very comfortable over the course of this video relegating them as a group with victim status, being victimized by intersectionality.
Everything. It's hard to imagine an idea less likely to produce a free and equal America than that. But what do I know? I'm just a straight white male. I'm Ben Shapiro.
See? By the way, you're only white to some groups of people, Ben. There are other groups of people who wouldn't consider you white because of your Jewishness. Even your status of privilege hangs from a thread under certain social conditions.
For Prager University.
Thank you.
Yeah, well. Like I said, they are terrified. They will do anything they can to keep people who do suffer similar grievances from recognizing collectively that they're being screwed over. Easily. And they've been doing this for a very, 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 very long time. You can find propaganda to that effect going back to the Jim Crow days. You can find it back to the suffragette days. You know, you go back then, you see propaganda papers, literal leaflets they would pin up on telephone poles, you know, where they would talk about how if you give woman the vote, she's going to emasculate you, you know, like, oh, why the women are, you know, dainty, beautiful individuals. Why would you ever relegate them to, you know, the political responsibilities of suffrage, you know? All these arguments, they're very old, and they worked before. And they're still working for some people, but they're working less and less as time goes on. They are growing increasingly ineffective with time. Because their ideas, I'll tell you this is the last thing I'm going to say, okay? I've said this many times before. You can tell whether or not a person's a crank by whether or not they're actually able to summarize the arguments of their opponent. I can summarize the arguments of any conservative I debate. Have you ever met a conservative or watched a PragerU video that accurately described the things they were criticizing once in your entire life? It reminds me of Sargon of Akkad. He went to some panel, this was years and years ago. He went to some panel a while ago, and he was asked what the definition of feminism is. And he was like, well, feminism is a tyrannical movement designed to attack and denigrate white men or something like that. And like, I think he was asked again, he still couldn't, he had no idea. Like, he'd spent years of his YouTube career attacking feminists. He had no idea what feminism is, you know? Or socialism. Socialism is when government does stuff, you know? Is that why you asked Nico to define fascism? The debate fell apart. Well, that debate was doomed to begin with. But people should be able to understand the definitions of things they're attacking. Is that not a reasonable belief on my part? That maybe possibly, if you're going to get a big name figure and fund them to create a well-edited video attacking a given idea, that you should be able to actually define that idea. I feel like that's reasonable, personally. You know, that I don't know.